I'm Dr. John Howie, the abnormal psychology professor here at Pikeville, at the University of Pikeville. I've been here for 29 years. I originally grew up in Alabama, in the South. Had quite an experience, a lot of experience with civil rights movement and stuff down there. Arrested a few times, protested the Vietnam War. Actually went to South America to dodge the draft, and the draft dodged me. So got my PhD at the University of Dallas, which is, actually, I don't know how I ended up, I ended up there because I went, well, you want to hear about the calling of how I got called to psychology, right? Well, what happened was, I was living in Canada. I lived in Canada in a teepee. Do not live in teepees in Canada in the wintertime. This is not a good plan, okay? Especially if you haven't got a good wood supply already chopped up. Okay, so, but I had a dream about my brother, David, and I dreamed that I was in shallow water, okay? And I was playing with these little snakes in the shallow water. My other two brothers, Mitch and Don, came up and asked me, is it safe to play with snakes in the water? And I said, what do you think I'm doing? I'm playing with snakes in the water, stupid brothers. Jesus, these little brothers, I swear. Anyway, I woke up and I went, you idiot. My brother David, he was out in the middle of this huge flood on a 30-foot dragon snake, right? Yeah. Depends on the size of the snake and how deep the water is. Now, water, of course, in psychology, usually signifies the unconscious. The snake signifies consciousness and understanding of what the earth is. So, I mean, that's the classic Jungian stuff. So, I went home. David had, actually, I didn't go home that time. I had another dream. And a couple of weeks later, and I said, well, if I have another dream, I better, this is before cell phones, you know, back in the 70s. Anyway, so what I did was, I had a dream in which I was asking my two brothers, where's David? And they said, oh, he's up there. And there was a kite. You ever see a kite when you get the string cut? And it goes like, yeah, that one. There's David. Oh, he's kind of lost his connection to the earth kind of thing. So I started hitchhiking out in a snowstorm in February. Anyway, and I got home and he had a manic episode. He's about 20, so that's generally when those kick in. And as a reward for taking care of David, the whole family was working on taking care of David, but he was the only one who wouldn't go by the rules and go to sleep when everybody agreed to go to sleep, right? Because he's manic. So he was in the hospital for about a month and stuff. But I ended up taking some German courses, and I ended up going to Zurich, to the Jung Institute in Zurich. But at first I had to learn German, so I went to Germany and learned some German for 6 months. And then I went to the Jung Institute in Zurich. And then I came back over here to get a master's degree. But the guy who was the head of the Jung Institute in Zurich, James Hillman, who does archetypal psychology, he had gone over to the University of Dallas. And I had a friend in Fort Worth who I'd met at the Rope Institute of Buddhist Studies. Both, anyway, so it all came together. And so I think that when you hear your calling, doors open up. I mean, obstruction comes into place to just make sure that you will get past the threshold guardians and stuff. But then things open up in the direction that you need to go. But you don't know what that is, usually, right? But you kind of have a sense of it from your intuition and the passion that you have for that particular subject. Dad wanted me to be a doctor, an MD, and those guys, that's all they get to do. They're technicians. It's boring, I think. And so there was 8 kids in the family. The 7th one finally went to med school. So he didn't get the kids to do what they want. But he always said, you do what you want to do. And that's what I try to get my students to do. That's what they're doing the first 4 years. And I tell the freshmen, the general psychology students, the intro, look, you got to figure out what you want to do. Not what your mommy wants you to do. Not going to med school if that's not what you want to do, because you're going to have to be completely committed and passionate about that if you want to do it. That's great. But if you're not, that's terrible. Okay? You meet these doctors or something who originally started to be a lawyer and they decided, I don't want to be a lawyer. You don't want to have to wait till grad school or 2 grad schools before you figure out what you're doing. But that's what I try to do in my classes through dream work and shamanistic journeys and stuff like that.
You had such an interesting life. You talk about South America and, in a TP in Canada and the Europa Institute and civil rights and protesting the Vietnam War. But I wonder, Dr. John Howie, as a kid, right, when you're growing up in Alabama, what'd you want to do as a kid? What'd you want to be?
Well, I figured out I was really good at panhandling. Because I was, you had to get these tickets for the, what was it, the Boy Scout Expo, right? So we had put up, we'd taken an old 1956 motor and cleaned it up, and we didn't make it run again. We just had it cleaned up so it was a display kind of thing. But selling those exposition tickets, nobody wants to go to a Boy Scout exposition, even if it is, at the fairgrounds out there and stuff. But I figured, though, they would give you 50 cents or $1, even if they didn't want the tickets. And so I started giving tickets away, and then getting more money. And so anyway, you could work that as a panhandle thing, right? They didn't want the expo tickets, so you could start giving them away. And anyway, it worked really good, and I found I was really good on the street, And so when I hitchhiked through South America from Colombia to Argentina, I learned Spanish. And that helped me later in my career. Okay, there's this whole thing that things come together and you're like, oh, well, the Spanish would be important. Because when I got my PhD, they didn't care that I had a PhD in psychology. I knew Spanish. Oh, now, this is good. Spanish will hire you, right? Because you try to get somebody who's got an advanced degree and knows Spanish. That could be difficult in Texas in the 80s. So that's where I got that from. But there's all those Sufi stories and stuff like that. What is the other guy who's the Muslim guy who tells funny stories? Anyway, the ones about the trickster kind of guys and how the whole thing's come together, and so, oh yeah, that adds to that, and to that, and to that. But you don't think that you're right about these things, okay? You can misinterpret dreams really easily. Yeah. You can make big mistakes. I had a series of dreams where I kept finding nest with ex-wife of mine. Anyway, but I thought that meant we were supposed to get together, but I should have noticed the nests were empty. This is like a good sign that, get the hell out of Dodge. So,
yeah,
is that along the lines of what you wanted to know?
You talked about dreams and
Yeah.
how that's been, your dreams class has been so revolutionary to so many students. But in a different way, a dream job. What would be a dream job for you? Are you currently living it? What is that?
Yeah, well, I had a bout with cancer last semester, and so you got to take a semester off to fight cancer, okay? And I actually finished my fall semester, and went in and had the surgery to get my upper left lobe of my lung taken out, okay? Like December 18th, a couple of days after you had to, the day after you had to turn in your grades. So I made it that far, and then I like doing what I do, and that's one thing that you find out when you're not able to do what you do. That's devastating, and then your brain doesn't work. Chemo, they talk about, they don't tell you beforehand. Your brain goes foggy. You can't think of anything, and then you're like, oh no, am I going to be like this? Ah, Jesus, this is. Oh. Anyway, and so now I'm back teaching, and I like teaching. I'm good at this, and I don't want to not do this. I mean, I was like, people on the streets, Pikeville, here, let me teach you something kind of thing. It's really obnoxious, because they'll let you do that in the classroom, but you shouldn't try it on the streets all the time. So, I ended up having my dream job at Pikeville I didn't know it was my dream job lots of times, okay? And then there's periods where you have a Camelot period where you've got all the people that you want. There's a lot of, this school has been through various times where they start firing a bunch of people. It's a boom-bust cycle. And the college acts like it's the coal business or something, and boom and bust. Get real big, and then, oh no, we got to fire all these people. And somehow I've survived all that. So, this is my 29th year. And so it is my dream job, because you get away with doing things when you're right on the edge. They don't know what you're doing in psychology. So I started doing dream seminars 29 years ago. So, well, in the spring it'll be 29 years. So and they work. And I'm not really quite sure how they work, because I can get students to do stuff that I can't even do myself.
Mm-hmm.
I have not succeeded in taking a shamanic journey myself, and yet I've taken, hundreds of kids on those.
Mm.
And I don't know why that works, but it does. So
Mm.
I feel like, Moses, who doesn't get to go to the promised land or something. No. That sounds too grandiose.
But that's, but you're talking about paths and leading people, and I know you talked about your brother and his needs that sent you from
Mhm.
Canada back home.
Yeah.
Was there anything else in life that happened to spur you on to the path that you're on now?
The zeitgeist of the 1960s was big. I mean, the social justice issues come from that period of time. Also, the interest in transpersonal psychology is one aspect and that has to do with the Buddhism stuff. And when I did the Buddhist kind of thing, I spent a couple of summers at what's now the University of Naropa, which was Naropa Institute of Buddhist Studies back in the day when I was there. And those kind of, the reason I went into psychology was because that melded all this stuff together. In psychology, you could do much more philosophical stuff. You could have those kind of questions. And that was my major at Swarthmore College, was philosophy, because you could pick and choose. So I did philosophy of the social sciences. So I would be like, oh yeah, a little sociology here, a little anthropology here. And I noticed that psychology was the place where you could steal from everybody. They're the pirates of the high seas of academia, man. So you could go in and grab something from anthropology or sciences and stuff. I mean, because I did the pre-med courses, all except a semester of calculus and something else. Organic chemistry, yeah, those were the 2 I was missing. But I took all the other stuff, so I knew science really well, because I thought I was going to be a medical doctor. But taking that kind of science and looking at the evolutionary perspective in psychology has that kind of thing. So you could pull from all sorts of different places. And psychology seemed to be a place where you could, I have a tendency to go off on bunny trails. And so I go off on a bunny trail into anthropological issues, Victor Turner or something like that, right? Or then you could go off into chaos theory and complexity theory. You can go off in any direction you want. And psychology's, it's not like chemistry where they have a periodic table. We ain't got no periodic table. We're still looking for one, all right? So there's no, it's not set in stone. Plus you get to fight with people, the behaviorist, right? So now I hired a behaviorist here because you gotta have somebody to fight. Well, no, I mean, you've gotta have both sides of the field. But there's a battle there, and injustice and stuff happens within that context. And then you get to fight the psychiatrist. The medical field. Oh man, they did terrible things. They did lobotomies and stuff back in the 50s. One flew over the cuckoo's nest, right? So then you get Ken Kesey, you can do that. You can do the film. You can do psychology of film. You do psychology of religion. You can get away with doing psychology of anything you want to do. I've done psychology of pirates, okay? You can do all of these different things, and it works. So I don't know. I keep getting to do things that I want to do. And I don't even know what they were until I started doing them.
And you think about the diversity of your interests and just even those courses you talked about, right? Just in a life, 29 years here, and you did a lot of life reflection during your cancer journey. I wonder if you could, in a sentence, I know it's a challenge, define what your call is. Dr. John Howie is called to...
Teach students to find themselves. I think that would be it in a nutshell. And when they do, that makes you really happy. I don't know how they do that, but you have to get them to actually discover who they are within themselves. Now, I cheat with dreams. I mean, come on, how much more personal can you get, right? You got the material right there and kind of in front of you. So that's one way, that to teach them how to be true to themselves. And I buy into that old humanistic, human potential kind of stuff. And it works, but it's not easy. And it takes a little bit of fortitude, takes balls. In Spanish, it's huevos, which are eggs, which is a much better term for that, because you can say ella tiene huevos, which is actually more true than he has them. So, but you have to go with what it is that you know is right for you, and only you can know that. Nobody else can tell you that. And somehow, and that is the role of a teacher, to kind of hold that place. And half the time, you aren't even as smart as they think you are. But as long as they think you're that smart, and they go as if you were, they become that much smarter themselves. Okay, they aspire to that goal and they get there. And I think it's just being a trickster in some ways. I don't think it's really that mentoring, you're not really on that high plane that they think they are. That the students think you are.
I mean, you are an iconic figure here. I mean, really, when you
I
go
don't know
out,
how that happened.
When you go
I
out,
have no idea how that happened. I'm not responsible for that.
When you go out in the community, you know, people are always, they might recount, especially when you talk to alums and they recount their time at Pikeville College or UPike, and then they'll always say, and is John Howie still teaching, or how is John Howie, you know? And so obviously you've made a huge impact on so many people. But I wonder, on the flip side, who is it that most inspired you on your path to know who you are and how to express that?
And this is the reason I don't believe in online shit. Okay, because when I was when I was in college and grad school, you make really tight friends there. And that community that you get into, that's where you learn your stuff. Now, your professors and stuff are good. James Hillman is a teacher kind of thing. Robert Romanishin, Robert Sartello. Yes, those are inspiring teachers. Churchill. They're good. But it's that community that's going with them that makes a difference. And that's the kind of thing I think that the University of Pikeville is striving towards, is having a sense of community within the university. And I think they're finally getting around to having that. It takes a certain number of people to be able to do that. And 1,200 for the size of an undergraduate school, that's good. I think that's the same that Center has, Swarthmore has that. Small liberal arts colleges should have that. Now, we're doing the professional stuff too, because otherwise this small liberal arts college would not survive at all. But I do believe in the liberal arts education, and that has to do with people finding their own path, and then finding other people who are looking at that same path, and together they start to really understand where it is they want to go. Now, you were talking about the people that inspire you. Doug Gerwin, the people that I lived with in college and grad school, those are the ones that you really, they further you on your path, I think. I don't know how to, and I've always usually had a best friend, and I don't believe much in astrology, but they were always Tauruses. I'm a Capricorn. I don't know how that worked. It was like, no, that's the solid earth kind of thing. And there's ways to interpret that that's not that silly stuff they have in the newspapers and things that have more to do with alchemical kinds of things, and fire, earth, air, and water. Anyway, there's a whole alchemical thing that I could go into, but I tend to obfuscate a little bit too much, okay? And make it much more complex than it really was to start with. But as you get older, you get really simple singers, which is good on occasion. But I don't really feel that it's you who's doing that stuff, that it's I found out when I was when I went under anesthesia, evidently I lost the filters I have, and everybody, when I tell them that story, they're like, You didn't have any filters to start with. Yeah, but that diaphanous little screen, it disappeared. My wife says it never came back after the anesthesia. I was bad before, but I am really good at intuitively figuring out where the crippling disorder is or the pile of poop is. And I will step in it no matter where it is. And I don't intend to do that. Oh, let me go look for that. No, I accidentally, and I'm like, oh, geez, I found it again. That can be an ability within therapy and stuff like that, to really just pinpoint it. And you don't really know where it is, but you intuitively find it and hit it. And I don't know how you do it, but I've noticed that the two preacher type people, yourself and James Browning, have that kind of ability to make people feel comfortable enough to talk about who they are and stuff. And if you open up, then they'll open up. And you have to do that with students, and you have to be a little bit self-revelatory in order for them to feel like they can reveal themselves. There's a certain amount of trust. It's an odd thing to try to do at a college, I think. I can't do it with PowerPoints. I don't do that, okay? Online, no. I'll talk to you any day of the week, but I don't want okay. I'm a technophobe.
When people look at your life, and maybe even someone watching this interview today, and they say, you know, you're living my life. I wanna do what you're doing. What did you do to position yourself for the career that you are in now?
Colored chalk. No, I swear, several of the students that I've mentored along the way, and I always use colored chalk. And except my colored chalk is not really well organized, and so it goes off here, and it goes off here, and every once in a while I'll change chalk because I can think of another thing, or actually maybe there's a piece of chalk. Anyway, it changes, but people they would take pictures, or I had a couple of students, Sarah Adkins, she would sit there and change color pens every time it changed and stuff to keep up with it. And I appeal to some people, I don't appeal to other people. And people don't have oh yeah, I like him, okay. No, they either love me or hate me. There's not that in between. No, psychology students, they're either avoiding me like the plague, or they're like taking every one of my classes and every night class that I do. I tell them during the day, I let myself loose more at night, and they're like, "Wow, this will be really fun," or "I'm going the other way," kind of thing. Because I really set a high standard for my students. I refuse to dumb down my classes. I make them write papers. I make them read the books. You got to read and write. You're in college. Get over it. If you can't read and write, do something else, okay? But don't try to do college if you don't want to. And you got to work at it. And it really does require work. Of course, I like the work. I mean, got to read books. Oh boy. Then you get to read books that you make them read, so that you can talk about the books. And then you're good, right? And then you're not going to make them read bad. Well, I do have to make them read bad books. They're called textbooks. I don't know how they make really interesting subjects boring, but they do. Textbooks are the bane of. But I don't always use textbooks now, so you can use regular trade books, and you can do different things. Then it's much better, and they're cheaper. They don't cost $200 or $150, $200 a piece, which is, it's obscene. That's just ridiculous. But if you use Frederick Douglass, his narrative of his life there, that's good literature. I hadn't read it. I grew up in Alabama, right? Shoot, we had who's the guy who's the FBI director? Hoover. He wrote the book we had on communism. Okay, I mean, he's kind of an anti-commie guy, McCarthy era kind of guy. No, he's not going to be able to write anything. I never heard about Frederick Douglass and stuff when I was in high school. Hell, I thought that the South had won the Civil War by the time we got into the book, Anyway,
well, in this interesting, desire, passion you have to educate, to teach, and to help people be who they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
To come alive, to really blossom. You've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of encounters with students,
Oh yeah.
particularly as dreams open up things their whole lives may be turned upside down. But when they come and they say, Dr. Howie, I just have no idea what I'm supposed to do with my life.
I said, that's good. It's a good way to start into psychology, okay? That's usually what I tell them. I always liked refugees from Armington. Those are the people who start off in biology, because lots of people start off wanting to be a doctor, okay? Now, I've got a complex about that, obviously. My sister's a psychiatrist, by the way. But where was I going with that? I have noticed that I lose my
You were
trail.
talking about how, people who are refugees from other disciplines because they don't know what they really want to do.
Yeah.
And the advice you have for
And
them.
that happens a lot in psychology. William James was that way. Of course, there was no such thing as psychology before he made the introductory text to psychology. He was teaching stuff that he had never taught, that he had never learned before, never took a course in, which is what I did here too. I was a philosophy major, and then grad school I was a PhD in psychology, but we also did literature and stuff. So I've always been very interdisciplinary. I could not do without that. But and then I've got off on my bunny trail again here. Now I told my students this experiment this semester. Okay, if it gets better, it was the chemotherapy that's going away now, so I'm getting out of the fog. If it gets worse, the Alzheimer's coming on. Okay, so have the students tell me which direction we think we're going by the end of the semester. No. You wanted me to finish something, right?
Well, I just, as students encounter you and they don't know what they should do with their lives.
I really try to get them to, I'll quote Maslow here, okay? Somebody asked Maslow, he said, the student was asking, what should I do with my life, And Maslow says, well, what do you really like? And he says, I don't know. And he said, well, find out what you really like and do that. And it's follow your bliss is what it ends up being. But that was his interchange with the student. Just figure out what you really love to do and do it. And it's not simple like that, but it is that simple. I mean, you know what you like to do, okay? And if that's what it is, that's what you have to figure out a way to be able to do that stuff. And you'd rather have it as your vocation as opposed to your avocation, okay? I mean, there's stuff that you'll like to do that you probably can't make a living at. But if you really love kayaking, go for it, especially when you're younger. That's a good thing to do. I mean, you take breaks from college on occasion. Somewhere between high school and grad school, you need a year or two to do something completely different, I think. Probably in a completely different continent or something. I mean, you need to get out of your safe space. And the thing about people in Appalachia, if you can get them to go somewhere, they're scared to go here, they're scared to leave town, blah, 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 and their mother's scared. Anyway, you get them there, they suddenly find out, this isn't that bad. It's a lot easier than Appalachia. Shoot, after Appalachia, everything's easy. And so you can kind of make it much better. And we have lots of those students here. Also have students, the nice thing is that we bring people from other places. And then you get from other countries and stuff. And they have a lot, Appalachia, we're a third world nation in the middle. So when we get third world people coming in, we're good. Because they can identify with that. So that's one thing that I like too.